The first time I visited Helen in the nursing home, she didn't know who I was. Helen and I had been friends since 1953. We had raised our children on the same street. We had buried our husbands in the same year. She was the only person on earth who knew what my mother's voice sounded like when she sang. I was 62. Helen was 64. She had been moved into a nursing home 8 months earlier after a fall, and I had been putting off the visit because I did not want to see what I was about to see. She looked at me from her chair by the window. She smiled politely. She said, "It's so nice of you to come visit." Then she asked me whose mother I was. I drove home that afternoon and pulled over twice because my hands were shaking too hard to hold the wheel. When I got back to my kitchen, I did something I had never done in my life. I sat down at the table. I did not turn on the radio. I did not pick up a newspaper. I did not call anyone. I sat in silence for 30 minutes. That was 30 years ago. I have done it every morning since. I'm 92 years old. I live alone. I have not had a single moment of memory loss that anyone, including my doctor, has been able to identify. He says he doesn't know why. I think I do. I want to tell you about one habit, not 5 habits, not a routine. One habit. I have done it at 6 a.m. every day for 30 years, and I am convinced it is the reason I am sitting in my own kitchen. And Helen, who is 2 years younger than me, is buried in the cemetery on Pine Street. Every morning at 6 a.m. I sit at this kitchen table for 30 minutes in complete silence. That is the entire habit. I know how small that sounds. Let me tell you what I learned about Helen on the drive home that afternoon, because it changed the way I understood old age. Helen had not been quiet, ever, not one morning of her life. She had grown up in a house with 7 siblings and a radio that played from sunrise until the news at 10 p.m. When she got married, she replaced the radio with a television. When her husband died, she turned the volume up. The television was on when she ate breakfast. It was on when she did the dishes. It was on when she sat down with her crossword. It was on when she fell asleep on the couch. Her daughter told me the day after my visit that Helen had not eaten a single meal in silence in 40 years. I think about that every morning when I sit down with my coffee and don't reach for anything. What does silence do? I am not a doctor. I cannot give you the science. I can tell you what I have experienced. When you sit in silence at 6 a.m. for 30 minutes, things begin to come back to you, slowly at first. Names you had not thought of in 20 years. The smell of your grandmother's coat. A conversation you had with your husband on a Tuesday in 1971 that you had completely forgotten. They come back not because you are trying to remember. They come back because you have given them room. A mind that is never quiet is a mind that never gets to sort itself out. Everything just piles up. And one day, when you most need to find a memory, you reach for it, and there is too much noise in the way. That, I think, is what happened to Helen. Not dementia in the medical sense, not a disease. 40 years of never letting her own mind speak to her. I have a friend named Margaret who tried to do this with me. She is 88. She came over one morning in 2019 and sat at this table with me at 6 a.m. She lasted 4 minutes before she got up and turned on the television. She apologized. She said, "I can't bear it. The silence makes me think about things I don't want to think about. I said, that is exactly what it is for. I have not seen Margaret again at 6 a.m. She did not come back. I will tell you something I have never told her. She moved into assisted living in 2022. There were many mornings I did not want to sit at this table. The morning after my husband died, I did not want to. I did it anyway. The morning after I broke my wrist falling on ice in 2003, I did it anyway. The morning my younger sister called to tell me she had pancreatic cancer, I did it anyway. The morning of my 81st birthday, when I would have liked to sleep until noon, I did it anyway. The habit does not care how you feel. The habit is the habit. What happens during those 30 minutes? Sometimes I think about the day ahead. Sometimes I think about my husband. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I just look at the way the light moves across the cabinets. Sometimes I sit there and think about absolutely nothing, and that is the best kind of mourning. I do not meditate. I do not pray exactly. I do not have a technique. I just sit with my coffee in my own kitchen, with no voices telling me what is happening in the world. The world will be there at 6:30. It has waited this long. It can wait 30 more minutes. When I go to bed at night, I think about my mind the same way I think about my kitchen. I clean the kitchen before I sleep. I rinse the dishes. I wipe the counter. I put things back where they belong. The morning is when I do that for my mind. I let it settle. I let things rise to the surface that need to rise. I let other things drift away. That is what those 30 minutes are for. I am 92 years old. My doctor said to me last year, I have never had a patient your age with your cognitive scores. I want to know what you are doing differently. I told him about the kitchen table. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he wrote on his prescription pad, 30 minutes of silence at 6 a.m. He told me he was going to give it to a patient he was worried about. I do not know if she did it. I hope so. If you take one thing from anything I have ever said in this kitchen, take this. Sit in silence somewhere every single morning for 30 minutes before the world begins, before the news, before the phone, before the television, before whatever it is that fills your morning with someone else's voice. Give your mind 30 minutes, just 30 minutes, to be its own. That is what I think saved me. I'll see you in the next one.